Welcome to Cover to Cover Jovelyn's Bistro. And how is everybody on this Tuesday? We are rolling into the end of August, and I like to think that some of y'all have done some summer art, some reading, something to feed that muse inside of you, your curiosity. And as you know, in Jovelyn's Bistro, we bring in artists from all over, writers, thinkers, philosophers, and folks who just want to have conscious conversation. And today's guest who's coming up into Joblin's Bistro is Debra Levine. Deborah is a Los Angeles-based arts journalist, dance critic, and film historian. With over 3 decades of experience documenting the performance arts, that's a good thing. She has dedicated much of her career to preserving the legacy of Golden Age Hollywood choreography, culminating in her authoritative 2026 biography of Jack Cole. And her new work is called Jive. How about that on a Tuesday? So welcome, Deborah Levine, to Jovelyn's Bistro. Hi, Deborah. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm fine, Jovelyn. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I was excited to hear, from our audience, right? I like to bring
Uh-huh.
them things that delight. I think if it delights me, my curiosity, it's going to maybe delight some of my audience, if not all of my audience. So
That's
tell
right.
us, you're a historian. How did you find Jack Cole in all of
Sure.
this here?
Sure. It's many people ask me that question because at the time when I started, first of all, I'm a longtime dance critic. So, dancers, choreography, it's all my wheelhouse. And somebody turned me on to Jack Cole, who, of course, I had heard of, but he had really disappeared from the mainstream, I would say, during the years when I was a dancer in New York and then going into being a dance writer. So
Mhm.
someone said very prophetic words to me: somebody needs to write about Jack Cole. And it was the tone of voice and it was who said it to me. Sometimes you just really need to pay attention. And this was in the year 2007, 2008. So I've been at it a long time. And I Googled his name, and there was very, very little about him on the internet at the time. Of course, now there's just gobs and gobs of information about him because he's a fascinating creature. The first connection was because I'm a film buff as well as a dance writer. The first connection was that he was Marilyn Monroe's, as it were, house choreographer. He did 6 movies with Monroe. Anytime she took a dance step or sang a song in a movie musical, which was not the entirety of her canon, but it was a very nice section of it, Jack Cole was by her side, coaching her. And of course, she was so marvelous. Famously, I'm sure we'll talk about her performance in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is their most famous collaboration.
Yeah,
But I really, that just had me hooked.
it had you
And
hooked.
and right, so you hear about this person and that person, especially in the age of the internet where we're all Googling all the time. But I would say that I got hooked very quickly because to the extent to which I could get to see his films and the films that he choreographed, and I could really start studying his dance numbers, a light bulb went off, and I thought, my God, he's really good. I mean,
Mm.
he's not just somebody, it's not just a name, it's not just interesting for all kinds of reasons, but I recognized in him a fabulous choreographer, which is to say, 8 counts of music by 8 counts of music, the way he strung it together, the way he made it happen, all of the elements of a great choreographer, the dynamism, the range, the everything I saw in his work. And I've been at it ever since.
And so the time that he was doing his thing out there, he was also among his successors, Bob Fosse or Jerome Robbins. So why did you have to hear about him and
Yes,
then go digging to
yes,
find out who this fabulous person, in your
yes.
opinion, as a
Yeah, you'd
historian?
think. Yeah,
Yeah,
you'd
you
think.
think.
No, I know. And it's I have a million. First of all, I just wrote a book about that question. I
Mm,
mean, it's in the background. Like, what happened to him? And it's a confluence. It's, what do they call it? A perfect storm. He was let's look at his life elements first. He was a
mhm,
gay man. He had no children. He did have a significant other for years, but that gentleman died about 2 years after Cole died in 1974. And then there
mhm,
was the F word, Fosse. Okay.
mhm,
Bob Fosse really stepped into the space that Jack Cole carved for
mm,
highly technical, highly choreographed dance on the stage and screen. Of course, Fosse, very much more Broadway man, and Cole, although he did Broadway, he was more, I would say, accomplished on the Hollywood side. Then you get to our lovely country, big continent, 3,000 miles between the coasts.
mhm,
And the dance Who is Who is all on the East Coast in New York. So Cole was working in Los Angeles and did not have the critical support, really, of the scholars, the critics, the institutions, the funders, the donors, the ladies who lunch, the whole thing. He was a very independent spirit. He was a difficult man, and it was hard to cozy up to him. He made it on his own, and we'll describe his trajectory, I'm sure. But these are all reasons. And not only he worked in Los Angeles, but he was a commercial artist. He had his eye on the money.
mm,
And in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, when American modern dance was in ascendance as an art form, he did not, although he came out of that world, and I can describe that in further detail, he he did not fall into the starving artist mentality. He did not. He came from, well, in any case, I don't want to dive into his life story, but he he was very clever. He was an arts entrepreneur. He hit the ground of New York in 1931 as a
mhm.
young modern dancer. Not a good time to start a career in anything because of the Depression. And he quickly realized when in 1933 prohibition was rescinded that all these swank nightclubs were popping up and they all featured entertainment. And he packaged a dance act uh, to sell and to star in the nightclubs starting, 34, more so 1938. Then by the 40s, he was very established in that realm. And that's really where his name became known.
Well, I can definitely appreciate him not buying into the starving artists. I've had that conversation with many artists in recent, more so in recent, but always have that thing, that starving artist, they glamorize it on some level. Like it almost
Yes.
feels like it's been glamorized. It's unacceptable, right? We need
Well,
to
that's
find
right.
ways to be able to feed ourselves as we feed the world with our art, right?
That's right. That's right. And Cole coming of age as an
Yeah.
artist in the 30s also meant that he overlapped with FDR and the New Deal. And the New
Mm-hmm.
Deal was our one national experiment
Yeah.
with recognizing the labor involved in being an artist and the idea that being an artist is a career, and it gives value to society. And
Yeah.
so there were, the WPA and those programs, and there was a dance element of that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was shekels, but they made money. And Cole was, for me, a hero in this regard because he paid his dancers. He lived a decent life, and he spoke about it. He said to live this life, I need access to medical care, I need to have a roof over my head, I need some stability, and and he made sure about that for himself. But I must say that in his heart of hearts, he was a pure artist. So this was one
Yeah.
of the many conflicts that made him a very interesting subject for a
How
biographer. Yeah.
how would you describe the core physical elements of Jack Cole technique, if we can
Yes.
call it a technique? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And you can call it a technique, although, as we know, it sounds like you know pretty much about dance.
No, I'm
Okay.
just curious because
Okay.
I'm really curious about how you even got to the point where you were able to critique. That's one of my questions,
Yeah.
but you
Okay.
right. But yeah,
Yes.
but I am interested in listening to you, and it's like these are the questions coming to my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just throw a shorthand in. If it weren't for his movies, forget about it. But
Okay.
we do have the movies. They aren't the great MGM movie musicals on the Town, An American in Paris. They're these B-minus movies that he made at Columbia Pictures in Hollywood. But they're out there. They're out there because, there's film geeks that, they keep everything going, right? So, but if it weren't for the dance numbers in those movies, I would not be able to analyze him. But I
Okay.
can tell you the elements that came into the Jack Cole look and feel. And I must say, it's an aesthetic that pleases me endlessly. Just, I
Okay.
think he was a gorgeous mover, and he could see people. He could see, for example, when he saw Marilyn Monroe when she was still really just kind of trending up. He brought out her femininity. He had that thing that many gay men have, not uniquely gay men, but let's just say, Cole was a gay man, and he had the woman inside him. And so he made her look so fantastic with very small gestures. But let me define the Cole look and feel. First of all, it's low to the ground. It's low. He was a modern dancer. He started as a modern dancer in those pioneering days of modern dance. Think Martha Graham, think Doris Humphrey, think Denishon. These are all the big names of early American modern dance. What is the one thing they have in common? Barefoot dancers. Barefoot dancers. Flat, bare feet on the ground, feeling the ground. And Cole, he went down. He went down, which is a very defining thing in modern dance. It was the idea that classical ballet, you go up.
Yeah.
You're holding your core up. The girls wear point shoes. They jump. The boys jump. The boys lift them. It's all about defying gravity. But modern dance was very much characterized by giving in and going down. Okay, so he had that component. But further, he was a dance polyglot. He spoke many dance languages,
Okay.
and one of them was Indian dance,
Okay.
which in his era was ubiquitously known as East Indian dance. It's one of those colonial hangover things. They called it East Indian because it was from the Indian subcontinent versus our Native American people, who we also called Indians. Okay, so he was very trained in East Indian dance. And East Indian dance, if you picture it, um, the men in their kind of pajama trousers,
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
legs spread wide, knees bent, arms held out. That was, really low to the ground, almost chugging forward,
Mm-hmm.
with the bare feet and with the bells at the ankle and everything. So that was an influence. Third influence, African American popular dance. Lindy Hop of the era. Starting in the
Mm-hmm.
early 30s, Jack Cole, who was an East Coast guy, born in New Jersey, but he started his career in New York. He made regular forays to Lenox Avenue and 140th Street to the Savoy
Mm,
Ballroom, where he was a cool cat on the dance floor, the big, long, wide breadth of the Savoy Ballroom that had literally a huge bandstand on one end. It's a shoebox, right? And then on the
mhm.
other end, and these were Fletcher Henderson, like these wild bands, Cab Calloway. That was his music of his youth. And he was a master Lindy Hopper,
Mm,
and danced real low, real low. If you can picture those couples, partnering each other, and their knees
yeah.
are bent and they're swiveling and all of that. So so Cole, okay, I've established that Cole was a down guy, but he also was very famous for introducing the component of Indian dance, which is called isolation. So the arms are doing one thing, the legs are doing another. The head is kind of moving back and forth, like there's a string out of each ear, pulling it laterally, back. You've seen that look.
Yeah, yeah.
He introduced that into American modern dance, and out came what he is credited for, which is called theatrical jazz dance. And that's the Fosse stuff. When you go on Broadway, that's the kind of dancing that you see. But it wasn't always thus. Jack Cole was the instigator of this new jazz style on Broadway and in the movies.
Inside of his life, did you discover the thing that seems to, well, we really think about it when we think about artists because it's more revealed, more so, although all people struggle with this. But did you find in his life, in the arts, in his work, that there were personal demons, if you will, that he had to fight with, and those outside and those internally? Was
Yes.
that a part of his story?
Yes, I did. I did. Sadly, sadly.
Yeah,
Well, it boils down to one word, and that word is anger.
yeah.
He had a rough childhood, which I encourage, I do write about in the book.
Okay.
And I'm not going to tell that saga, but he grew up the only child of divorced parents. Born in 1911, so we're talking about probably 1916, 1917. His single mother couldn't handle his feistiness, and
Yeah,
she kind of carted him off to boarding school, to Catholic boarding school, where he was pretty much raised by nuns, feeling very abandoned. And there's just a little story. I don't know what motored him, but the anger really started taking him over to the point that it became a trademark of his. And that goes back to the very top of our conversation when you said, why did he fade away? Well, he burned a lot of bridges, okay? He
yeah,
was a perfectionist. He was demanding. He was really cruel to his dancers. I mean, there are many, many famous stories, of
yeah.
the girl passing out in rehearsal, and of the other kids going to try to help her up, and he's yelling, "Leave her alone!" And they had to keep dancing around her body on the floor. Somebody
Mm,
dragged her out eventually. There's these very famous Jack Cole stories, and with the distance of time, I probably have cut him more of a break than people in his own era did. But yeah, so
mm,
anger. And then of course I love the way you asked that question, because you said
mm,
inside, and that would be inside, but then you said outside. And
mm-hmm.
I would say outside. I mean, on the one hand, I'm so admiring of how he went on and just on in the face of not getting that critical support. The people who supported him, and I'm referencing his nightclub era, which is kind of the
Mm-hmm.
40s. Well, the 40s and the 50s. He was also working in Hollywood at the time, but he believed in bringing highly technical, highly authentic, excellent dancing into popular venues. I mean, of course,
Mm-hmm.
the furthest manifestation of that was cinema, which, millions of people put their eyes on Marilyn Monroe, doing those Jack Cole moves. But
Mm-hmm.
in the nightclubs, I mean, first of all, this is a gay guy. He's really dancing in a very feminine, sensual way. I mean, and he worked it, he wore black lipstick.
Mm.
He had coal, Kohl, around his eyes. I mean, he had a bobble, he did this ethnic kind of dancing. And, he had drunk people catcalling at him, calling him a faggot and calling him all of that stuff. I thought he was so brave, and
Yeah.
I really, so he was up against that, but he was dogged. He was dogged. He did not step down from putting in front of people, and by the way, also bringing cultural art forms, Indian dance, African dance, Afro-Cuban dance, bringing them in these nightclubs to these all-white audiences, and those people did not sign up for seeing that. I mean, maybe in a comic kind of, but there was nothing funny about what he was doing. He was absolutely earnest, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate that about him. Of course, in the course of writing this book, when we went through George Floyd time and Black Lives Matter and all of the cultural evolution that we've gone through in our lifetimes, and the idea of appropriating from original artists, from authentic artists, um, I really had to grapple with this. And I spent a lot of time, researching and thinking. And, I hope that I have sufficiently addressed it in my book. I, I, I welcome further scholarship on that
Mm-hmm.
issue. But I really came to rest, as is my wont, as a white person, which I am, with the idea that he exposed homogeneous audiences to heterogeneous art forms. And he did it
Mm-hmm.
in the most earnest way and with his own high training and reaching for authenticity. So, but it was troubling because he regularly used body paint, which was, part of the era. He never used exaggerated blackface. It was not about blackface. It was about he danced as an Indian. One of the critics referred to his bisque toned skin.
Mm-hmm.
Bisque is such a pretty, color. So yeah, he did that. He wore facial makeup, and he was an artist of his era.
Mm. So let's read, if you could
Oh,
read a little bit of your work to the audience, take a couple minutes to do that. And then I have another question just sitting there waiting for you, baking in the oven.
okay, but yeah, back away. I'm going to excerpt from my preface, and I
Okay.
hope it's a cultural reference that everyone will recognize. Um, on March 10th, 2024, as the 96th Academy Awards were winding down, a hunky blonde actor in a sparkly pink suit hijacked the show. Watching Ryan Gosling make his Oscars takeover was a theater filled with industry who is who, Scorsese and Spielberg among them, and an additional 19 million viewers by broadcast. Clutching a mic in his pink gloved hand, Gosling crooned as he mounted the Dolby Theater stage. There, 62 male dancers awaited him to break into a whirling song and dance extravaganza choreographed by Mandy Moore. To use an apt showbiz expression, Gosling killed. The tongue-in-cheek dance number, I'm Just Ken, staged to the Oscar-nominated song in the movie Barbie, succeeded because it was assembled as a pastiche of familiar Hollywood dance number tropes. None was as recognizable as Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, choreographed by Jack Cole in 1953, as the crown jewel of director Howard Hawks' Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Cast as the singing and dancing Lorelei Lee, Marilyn Monroe, an upward trending starlet, rode diamonds like a fuchsia-tinged rocket ship into a stratosphere of celebrity. Cole conceived, choreographed, and directed Diamonds at mid-century as something new, unseen, born of a fever dream. It is iconic. Think Andy Warhol's soup cans. Think Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum. Think of the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand, all fresh, all groundbreaking. But Cole's name is strangely unknown. The day after the Oscars broadcast, stories proliferated in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Variety, and Hollywood Reporter, each offering a morning after analysis of Gosling's audacity. Not a single article included the name Jack Cole. The workarounds were awkward. For example, Variety called Gosling's act, quote, a tribute to Marilyn Monroe's diamonds. Just say his name. Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend fused Cole's unerring skill in staging sexy moves in syncopated rhythm amid eye-grabbing production design, all in the service of an actress loved by the camera, but not by the goddess terpsichore.
Mm.
So,
I,
yeah,
yeah. Those
yeah.
threads. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, just that I opened my book with this very
Yeah.
recent example that, you know, this weird thing about cinematic dance that when it's good, you kind of think like the actress is making it up as she goes along, like you're not thinking like, who did that?
Yeah.
I mean, we probably used to feel that way about film directors also. Like, but now there's such a high consciousness about, directors and auteurs and all of this, film stuff. But choreography in the movie, no, no.
I think
So, yeah.
about, I'm
Mhm.
taking a leap here in our last minute to think about Marilyn Monroe and Jack's work with her because she was in her time and ahead of her time, meaning that she was an activist in her own right. She
Yes,
refused to move in spaces if like Ella
yes,
Fitzgerald and her was very good friends, and she
yes,
actually got her high spot on a place that she should have been by saying, I'll come here every night. And so I'm thinking with her and Jack, but I'm also wondering in him working with her as this woman who's seen as a bombshell, but something about dance and a woman's body in the
yes,
safe hands of being taught.
yes,
That's where this sent you. So I'm making it up because it feels right that here's this woman who had her own troubled life, working with a man with a troubled life,
yes.
and then in that, to find part of her sensuality that is not through the gaze of patriarchy, but the intimate moments of moving our body in rhythm and with someone, to how that moves and then to feel that. So I want to keep that joyful thing. Where
Oh,
can they get their book in this? Where can they get the book? I'm sure at every bookstore.
yes.
In 10 seconds, why do you think they should read this book?
Oh, well, because Jack Cole was a great choreographer and he had his toe in every silo of American entertainment in the mid 20th century. And I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you into the nightclubs, onto the sound stages, and onto the Broadway stage, and you're going to have a ball reading it.
Debra Levine, thank you for introducing us to Jack. And last question, did he wear high heels when he was teaching her to dance?
Bigly, bigly, and a long skirt.
That's
Yes.
what I'm talking about.
Listen,
All right.
I love what you said. That was incredible. I wish I had wrote it down about Monroe. That's so
Very
marvelous.
true.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for joining me in Deborah and Joblin's Bistro. And until next time, next Tuesday, I'll see you. Be conscious, be mindful.
When they said they were bringing greatness, they were bringing horror. When they said they were bringing civilization and democracy, they were bringing domination and brutal colonization. When they said they were bringing freedom, they were bringing warehousing units and prisons. The truth is that they are bringing fascism. History is shaped by our actions. It is shaped by us choosing to fight together even when it is hard. History is ours to write. History is ours to shape. So the question is, are we going to do that? The question is, are you going to join us?
KPFA Sounds of Resistance since 1949.